Hi everyone, this week I'm drawing a badger in gel pen on black paper. I just do a very basic outline. I'm using a Derwent Studio white pencil. I want the minimum amount of line work necessary on this because it can be quite difficult to remove all of the white pencil if you put too much on. Sometimes you can see that when you photograph it. So I just do a very basic outline. I already had an idea of where I wanted to go with it from sketches in my sketchbook. Once I've got the line work done, I generally start with the nose and eyes first because I think that they're the most important things to get right when you're doing an animal. They're really quite essential to getting the character of it. I like stippling on noses. I think that gives quite a nice effect. It gives that kind of sort of glistening effect that you get on wet noses. And one of my favourite things is putting the highlight in the eyes because I always think, once it looks like it's got some character and expression in it, that sort of motivates me to carry on with the drawing. I'm sort of really interested in capturing character as opposed to it being ultra realistic. I think if something has character, the anatomy doesn't have to be perfect and it doesn't have to have a sort of photographic likeness. It just lives on its own. So I go on to the mouth. I'm really just looking to set up some outlines on my paper so that I've got something to work within. And I'm using the Sakura jelly roll pens. I have the set of 3 with the 05, the 08 and the 10 in it. I generally start off with the 05 and I start off very lightly because once you've put pen on, it's quite hard to take it off again. So I don't go in too heavy at the start. I just try and sort of establish what direction the fur is going and also, where my outlines are. I decided to go on and do the ears. I'd gone across the nose. So I'm all the time looking at reference photos just so that I can see how the hair grows, what sort of direction it goes in, and sort of the structure of the animal. Because badgers are really, they're quite funky. They have these really cute two-toned ears, which are really nice. I started to lay some whites in across the snout. And sort of when you come down the snout, if you actually look on photos of badgers, where the whiskers come out, they have sort of dark bits around there. So I'd gone and sort of marked them out on my paper in the sketching stage so that I knew to go around them and leave those black. I mean, when you're working with white on black, you have to have some sort of degree of forward thinking what you're doing. That's why you can see me waving my pen about a lot. I didn't even realise that I did this until I started videoing myself. And I think it's where I'm thinking and practicing the stroke before I actually put the pen on the paper. Gel pens can be a bit tricky to work with. I mean, pen is my natural habitat. I love drawing with pens, but just the way a gel pen works, they're quite, I would describe them as a little bit gloopy. Sometimes your tip can get quite sort of glued up with the gel, and I keep a piece of kitchen towel there just to rest my hand on so that I'm not resting on the paper. And I also use it just every now and then just to wipe the tip off because you can get a little bit of flaking drop down on your work. When it does flake, that's generally dry ink that's come off, and you can, just try to avoid smudging it. You can generally just brush that off and it will go. You will notice in a lot of my work are birds and animals. I like to have them smiling. And that's because I think, well, I like art to sort of make people feel happy. I appreciate that it has sort of, other uses to sort of draw attention to things and sort of make statements. But the way I figure is that, the world is sort of difficult enough. I like sort of things to be happy. I also look at lots and lots of photos of whatever I'm drawing. I generally have all kinds of different ones open at any one time, because you may see the ear better in one photo, you may see the eye structure better in another. Photos don't always tell the truth, especially they tend to make blacks very black. So it's problematic on things like badger, because you can't sort of see always the sort of structure in the ear and sort of how the fur goes and everything like that. So it's a good idea to just look at whatever you're drawing from lots of different angles and really get to know your subject. I've only seen a badger once when I was coming home from a night duty, and one actually trundled across the road in front of me, and I was astonished by how big it was. I mean, they're huge things, really quite amazing creatures. And, they just have a lovely face. It's so recognisably badger, isn't it, with that sort of black stripe up, and you can kind of play with that a bit if you want to sort of stylise your work a little bit more. I've done quite a lot of photorealistic work in the past and pet portraits, and I'm trying to get away from that now. I really want to sort of, bring more of me into my work. So I'm trying to get looser. It's not always easy, because I go back to realism at any sort of given opportunity. Start with the 0.5 and then I go on to the 0.8, where sort of, the white areas need building up a bit more. So I'm sort of quite careful with this. And I do a lot of what I call toing and froing. So once you build an area up white, you can kind of see other areas that you need to bring up as well. And Riley is always with me. He is my constant companion. It's really nice to have him in the studio, keeping me company. On the black bits with badgers, you don't really want to leave that completely black. But you can get some brilliant effects. I'm not very good at, I think it's chiaroscuro, I can't pronounce it properly, the sort of dramatic white against black. I prefer, because I knew he had black in his ears, but I didn't want to leave it completely black. I wanted to just sort of indicate that there is some fur there. So I went sort of very carefully, and on the back of their neck, the white comes down a little bit, and then there's some black there before it goes into that kind of, I don't know what you call it, that sort of grey marl that they have on their body. So I wanted to just sort of indicate that just very lightly with the 0.5. I mean, the thing with I normally use the Pigma Micron pens, and you can get sort of various weights of line depending on how much you press on the paper. It's a little bit more difficult to do with a gel pen. So I had to go very, very lightly just to sort of give indications of hairs. And hairs don't all go in the same direction. Your animals can look a bit combed if you do that. So you want to sort of just vary the direction of your hairs a little bit. And I tend to sort of do them in clumps. I sort of get into a rhythm with it. It's like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And, do little clumps of hairs, because that just makes it look a little bit more natural. And on his black stripe, I just wanted to give a little bit of indication of the fur there. Now, all is not lost. If you put on a bit too much pen in places, I go in with a black Pigma Micron fine liner, and you can just vary the width of the hairs doing that. I found it, particularly effective to if you can't get a thin enough sort of stroke with your gel pen, you can just thin it out a little bit with the black pen. And one of my favourite bits is getting towards the end. It's what I call the twiddly bits. It's where you just sort of bring the hairs out, so it sort of gives it a really sort of natural furry appearance, like you could kind of reach out and touch it. And in the ears, I just went in with a black Pigma Micron and I just darken the base of the hairs because it makes it look like they are actually growing out of the ear. It's quite effective. I do that on quite a lot of my drawings. I'd love it if anyone wants to have a go at this, because gel pens are really fun and I love the effect on the black paper. And thank you for spending your time with me, and hopefully I'll see you again soon.